Hello grade 8 and welcome back to lesson 9-2. So I'm on the top of textbook page 601. Okay, so in example 2 we learned how to find the axis of symmetry by using zeros of a function, okay, by looking at a graph. If a function has no zeros or they are difficult to identify from a graph, you can use a formula to find the axis of symmetry. Alright, so this formula works for all quadratic functions, so I recommend using, when you're given the quadratic function, meaning when you're given y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, right? When you're given the function, I recommend using this formula, you guys, every time, because it'll give you an exact answer. And what I mean by that is, say I have a coordinate plane, right? So here's my graph. Okay, if I had a parabola, say it intersects here, my zeros, and say it intersects here. Alright, and this is my parabola. Okay, this zero and this zero, both of these zeros, neither of these zeros are on an exact coordinate. So if I told you to tell me what the zero equals, it's in between -1 and -2, but I don't know, I don't have an exact answer, so looking at the graph doesn't help me in solving for these zeros, and therefore I can't come up with an exact axis of symmetry. Okay, so if you use this formula that they give you, x equals -b over 2a, alright, if we use this formula, you can solve for the axis of symmetry every single time and you get an exact answer. Okay, so we're going to use this then to solve. Okay, so what I want you to first do is pause this video and I want you to copy down this formula into your notebooks. Alright, it's super, super important. So please find in the axis of symmetry by using the formula. Then I want you to write this formula right here. Okay, I want you to write this and this. And if you want, even give yourself an example. We're going to walk through a few examples next. Okay, so I want you to pause this video and copy this formula. And then we're going to pick up with example 3. Okay, so for example 3, it says find the axis of symmetry of the graph of y equals x squared plus 3x plus 4. Okay, so y equals x squared plus 3x plus 4. So what you're going to notice here is that we don't have a graph to even look at to try to come up with the zeros, right? To then either identify the axis of symmetry if it's 1, 0, or to add together and divide by 2, right? If there are 2 zeros. So we don't even have a graph, we just have a function. And this actually works out great because we're going to use this formula here. The first thing you need to do is always make sure your quadratic function is in standard form. So standard form is when our exponents go in descending order from left to right, right? So I have x to the second, x to the first, and then my constant, that's my number without x or any variable, right, comes at the end. So this is in standard form, so that works out great. Now I need to identify a and b, right? So we said that standard form, right, standard form is y equals ax, oh, can you guys see that? We said that standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, right? This is called standard form. So when I look here, what is a? My value for a is my my coefficient before x squared, right? So here, my a value is just 1. So I'm going to identify a and b. So a is 1. B is always the coefficient before my single x. So that's here, right? ax squared plus bx. So b equals positive 3. And then if I were looking for a c value, it would be my constant, right? It's my number at the end here. But for my formula, I just need to know a and b. So now that I've identified a and b, I'm going to use the formula to find the axis of symmetry. So the formula is x equals -b over 2a. So all I'm going to do here now, you guys, is substitute, okay? I'm using substitution to solve. So I write my negative. B is 3 over 2a means 2 times a, right? So I'm going to put a set of parentheses here to indicate that this is multiplication. So 2 times a is 1. So -3 over 2a, and now I'm just going to simplify. 2 times 1. So I'm going to now just divide, right? If I have negative 3 over 2 times 1 is 2, right? What would my axis of symmetry be? Negative 3 over 2 simplifies to what? 2 goes into 3 once, and I have 1 left over. So my axis of symmetry here is 1.5, okay, which is also equal to negative 1.5. Alright, so you would write this as x equals negative 1.5. If I were to come over here to my graph, alright, negative 1.5, alright, negative 1.5 is in between 1 and 2. So my axis of symmetry would be right here, you guys. I would just draw this like dotted line, okay, if I were to plot that. But my answer, again, the axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1.5. Okay, so for the check it out number 3, right, it says find the axis of symmetry of the graph of y equals 2x squared plus x plus 3. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do to find the axis of symmetry is to first make sure I'm in standard form, which I am. Standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So then I need to identify a and b for my formula for my axis of symmetry. Okay, so here a is always the coefficient before x squared. So a here is positive 2. And then my b value is my coefficient before x. Here I don't have a coefficient, right? It's an imaginary 1. So b equals 1. Now I'm just going to use these values and substitute it into my axis of symmetry equation. So I have x equals negative b over 2a. Oops, can you guys see that? There we go. And now I'm just going to substitute, okay? So I have my negative in my formula. B is 1 over 2 times a. A here equals 2. Okay, and then I'm just going to simplify this. So I have negative 1 over 2 times 2 is 4. So my axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1/4 or negative 0, that's my dog, or negative 0.25. Okay, good timing, Ranger. All right, so either one of these will do, negative 1/4 or negative 0.25. Ranger, shh. All right, I need to pause my video to quiet down my dog. Be right back. Okay, last example I'm going to cover for example 3, okay? So this one's not in your book, I just made it up, but I just want to show you something. You must keep track of your negative signs when solving for the axis of symmetry. Okay, so here I want to find the axis of symmetry for y equals negative 3x squared minus 12x plus 7. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is make sure I'm in standard form, which I am. Okay, then I want to identify a and b. So a here equals negative 3, and b equals negative 12. Okay, so now I have 2 negatives. So now when I substitute into my formula, okay, I must keep track of my negative signs. So watch. My axis of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a. Always take the time, you guys, to write out your formula first, okay? Because it helps. So now I'm going to write my negative, okay, and then I'm going to substitute here. So instead of b, what am I going to put instead of b? I'm going to put negative 12. And instead of a here, instead of 2 times a, instead of a, I'm going to put negative 3. So 2 times, 2 times negative 3. Okay? Now I need to simplify. Something I want you to notice is that I have an odd number of negatives. So 1, 2, 3. When I have an odd number of negatives, automatically my final answer will be negative, okay? If it's an even number, it's going to be positive. And the reason why is, watch this, if I have a negative divided by a negative, that equals what? A positive. Then a positive times a negative will give me negative. But, so how I would rewrite this? All right, I write my first negative, and now I'm just going to simplify. Negative 12 over 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, okay? And then we would look at this as opposite of negative 12 over negative 6. Okay, so then let's just simplify and see what happens. So if I have a negative, and then what's negative 12 divided by negative 6? 2. Positive 2, right? What's opposite of 2? Negative 2. In other words, these two negatives cancel out. Negative 12 divided by negative 6 gives you 2, but then you have the negative in front. Opposite of 2 gives you what? Negative 2. So my answer here, my axis of symmetry, lies on the negative 2 on the x-axis. All right, which would be a big difference from positive 2, which is why it's very important to keep track of your signs. Okay, so I hope this video was helpful, you guys. You're doing great. Keep up the good work. Have a fabulous day.